Ja.
Right, good morning everybody. I'm quite aware that some of you have to leave early. Just when you need to leave, just leave. If you do have to leave early and you want to ask a question, obviously get your question in early. My name is Tudor Town Chairmanship Lake Parish Council. I'd like to welcome John Howell. I think we all know John Howell. And I'd also like to welcome all those from other parishes. We sent an invitation out to a neighbouring parish. I can see Casper here, so if I haven't said hello to you from a neighbouring parish, please forgive me. We've got a number of issues. John, you came here, I think at the end of April, to our annual parish meeting. At that time, and it's built since then strongly, planning is the big issue. We see in Shipley, and I'm sure other parishes will do the same, planning applications come in, pre-planning applications, inquiries as to land for pretty much every piece of greenfield sites around the villages of Shipley. So, we welcome your thoughts on how we protect ourselves. And as you know, as I mentioned last time, we are very ahead of the legal plan, but we've only literally just agreed to do that. Other issues are area of natural beauty, infrastructure, transport links, cycle paths, pollution issues, Henry, so it's quite a lot of stuff I've had through my email box that I'm asking. So I think John has said what he'll do is just take questions from the floor, and I have a series of questions there from residents who haven't been able to make the meeting. That's it. So over to you, John.
Well, first of all, let me apologise for being late. This is a very, very big constituency. It is over 350 square miles, and it's going to get bigger. So it's going to take it even longer to get from one end of the constituency to the other, as I have done today. Just by way of introduction, as you know, Henley and Parkston have got a neighbourhood plan, and you are here going ahead with it. I'm very pleased this week I was able to persuade the planning minister to give extra protection to neighbourhood plans. The difficulty with neighbourhood plans has been that if the district council's 5-year land supply fails for any reason, then technically all of the policies in the local plan and in neighbourhood plans are considered out of date. Now, there is very good case law about what happens in that situation. That doesn't mean to say that the neighbourhood plans are simply jumped. The neighbourhood plans still carry as much weight as they ever did, and that needs to be assessed by the planning committee. But anyway, the minister was very keen to put this beyond doubt, and so has reduced the period from 5 years to 3 years. Over a 2-year period. The 2-year validation of this approach is because there is a white paper due out on housing in the early new year, which will set the rules for the future. So this is a temporary situation in order to give plans a much greater say. So you'll end up in a situation whereas here, the district council does not have 5-year land supply, and therefore its policies are considered out of date. But in the case of Henley and Parkston, the neighbourhood plan has been only brought into force within 2 years. It does allocate sites for housing, and it is based on a 3-year housing supply, which makes all the difference for being able to protect you. But as you know, the Thames Farm application is back with the Central State House. Well, these rules came into effect on Monday, so that you should be applying those rules to that decision. So I'm confident that we've got very, very strong arguments to see your Thames Farm. So, with that as an introduction.
Is that underpinned by any case law, the Minister's announcement on Monday?
The Minister's announcement doesn't need to be underpinned by case law, but it is underpinned by case law. In that there is case law that is saying exactly the same thing. But what it does is crystallise the 3-year rule rather than the 5-year rule.
Do you happen to know what case law that is?
Yes, it's Crane and the Secretary of State for communities and local government. You're going to look it up for me now.
No, I know what plans have my work.
Okay.
Can I ask a supplementary to that? Residents in this area have been sort of receipt of letters from developers like Blackwood,
Yeah.
who are offering lots of money, no sale, no fee basis, to put forward planning applications. And I just spoke from one. There was only a short window of opportunity whilst the government tries to get lots of the needed houses built, and your local authority are currently failing to deliver. And there they were looking specifically at the 5-year land supply situation with SFPC. From my understanding, it's correct. It's been reduced now into the 3-year rule for neighbourhood planned areas, but we have an unintended consequence that these guys will now switch their focus of attention from areas that have large areas that have neighbourhood plans, large towns, to areas like our own, which are only just starting to become with neighbourhood plans. And we have the Incombra situation, for example, in our village, where one part of it, Mount Ida, was covered by the neighbourhood plan, and therefore the 3-year rule applies, the policies apply, and yet it's just stepped across the barrier according to the statement, the 3-year rule is not.
Okay.
There
There are a number of points in there. Firstly, the government has not set housing targets. The government hasn't set housing targets for over 6 years. We decided at the beginning of 2010 that it was not a sensible move for somebody sitting in Whitehall to assess the amount of houses that were going to apply to somewhere like South Oxfordshire. So that responsibility was given solely to the district council. All the government can do is to provide incentives to encourage greater home building, and it's up to the district council to decide whether to go ahead with them. On the second point, there are a whole lot of rules around about how you can move a local plan on, how it becomes less of a bureaucratic process, and there are some rules about making it much more even, so that people like that ones have less opportunity to go for the situation in an area and pick off individual elements within that. And I've been sitting on a group called the Local Plan in order to make recommendations for how to simplify that process. And I'm pleased that those things that we recommended that needed legislative change, that's been included in the neighbourhood planning bill, which is going through Parliament as we speak. Most of the changes don't require legislative change, and they will be included within the white paper that is coming out shortly. So I'm looking forward to being able to produce a table of the recommendations that we made and to tick off where they've been included in the process. So the situation with developers here, of course, they're going to get for every spot of green land. And there is nothing that you can do to stop them going with that, except to have a good defence to be able to say go away. And the best defence is an able plan. Now, I've been saying this for ages, and I'm the government's champion for able plans since I invented them in the first place. I do believe that if you have an able plan, you are in a much better position to be able to defend yourself. And the point that you made about people concentrating on non-naval planned areas is already there. There are two villages here, Chinna and Benson, I happen to live in Benson, so it's a personal difficulty for me. Chenna decided they weren't going to do an equal plan, and Benson couldn't be bothered. They thought that they would try an equal plan, and then they couldn't get the people to put time into it. And in both cases, immediately they decided on that, developers moved in and started putting in applications because there was no protection for them. They were down to the district council's idea allowance to buy, and it's been an absolute nightmare doing that. Chenna has gone back to do its plan, which is going through the process. Benson decided that they're going to do an equal plan pretty bloody quickly, and they're trying to do it in 6 months. Now it's going to slip a bit, but it's not going to slip that much, because how long you take to do an equal plan, it goes back to the conversation we were having last night. There is no village that is too small for an equal plan. No village that is too small for an equal plan. There is no village where it needs to cost them very much at all. If you look at Woodcote, they did it almost I think almost all on the basis of government grants and SOBC grants to be able to enable the plan and to get it up and running. And if you're going to speak to the people at Woodcote, and I would seriously advise you.
Well, we have.
Right, well, I would seriously advise you to keep in contact with them, because I went to see them for an update on their plan. And I said to them, you know, what have we gained out of this? And they said, the biggest thing that we've gained out of this is that we are now taken seriously, both by the district council and by the developers. And we're invited to the table for the discussions. Now that did not happen before. And I think that is a magnificent change that they have seen there, and it's one which they're very happy to praise.
There is a slight difference. Those large villages have allocations on the plan, and smaller villages like ours have no allocation at all.
Well, I don't think you should look at it in terms of the allocation. The allocation anyway is the starting point of it. What you need to do is to sit down and look at the village and to say, what do we need for the future? It's not a decision for SOBC to make. It's not a decision for anyone else to make. It's a decision for you to make about what the future of the village looks like. And you know, when Woodcote started, they thought, well, we don't need any more houses than we've got in the plan. And then, quite frankly, they said, well, we don't want to be a village full of old farts. We're going to lose the cricket club, we're going to lose the football club, we're going to lose the pubs, we're going to lose everything. We've got to plan this out ourselves. And what they wanted was a whole lot of affordable houses, so that people could choose to stay in the village. You know, our sons and daughters could learn could have somewhere that they could potentially buy. And that's what drove them on where they got the village support from.
No, jumping here, sorry. Can I take one question out there, and then David? Just in terms of this, so there are, I think, 89 parishes, John, and I see what you said, everybody can do it, but actually there are 3 reasons why parishes have probably not jumped on the bandwagon to do this. One is the cost. Okay, now you answered that to some extent, but we've estimated costs somewhere between 10 and 25,000, and we've also looked at grants, basically. There's a cost attached to that. Our precept is £45,000 a year. I mean, very many villages with very little in terms of financial resource or financial resource to do it. The second one is the human resource issue of getting people to devote the time and effort to do that. The third most important reason why I think many parishes have not done that is that there is an afforded protection or afforded protection of the local plan. In other words, the local parishes were protected at one point. Obviously, we don't have that protection with the land supply numbers. But there was no reason for us at that point, apart from understanding our own futures, if you like, in the community plan, to doing it for planning purposes because we were protected by that plan. Now, okay, but we started today, but we actually have applications for, as I mentioned at the start, for plots of land all around our green spaces, or all outside of the village. And I don't doubt that even if we move quite quickly, it's a bit like yellow lining, the cars park a bit further out. It puts even greater pressure on those smaller communities, land-managed resources, human resources, to do it. Does that make sense? But what do we do in the meantime? How do we protect ourselves, apart from using the basic planning principles, against these developers who come in with pots of money
to try and develop these green spaces without this 5-year answer. And we're outside the middle of the plan. That's the key.
The answer, the simple answer to that question is that you've answered it yourself. You're forced back to using basic planning principles. Now, what we can't use is a situation where you suddenly stop the planning process because you've decided to undertake a neighbourhood plan. And the reason we can't do that is because parish council lie to us. They say they're going to take on a neighbourhood plan, and then they don't do it. And that sterilises a whole area of land when we need housing at the moment. And what we've done is to, when we started the process, the time at which a neighbourhood plan had carried full weight and full force was after the referendum. The neighbourhood plan has had a referendum of people within the area at the end of the process, and we moved that back, or we are moving that back to after the examination, and the neighbourhood plans have it's quite embarrassing actually. I mean they've been having North Korean style majorities, but it's not surprising with the consultation process that needs to go on before you get to that phase. That there should be no surprises. There should be no surprises for anyone. Hess has been through this himself with the Hobson and Kennedy plan, and the majority was quite North Korean actually.
It got even better elsewhere, but we were very early.
John, can I just jump in, just on that answer, I don't want to take it from you, but why doesn't the government step in to provide some protection to local authority who's struggling with this 5-year land supply, moving from an existing plan where there was protection for the villages to the new plan? Why can it not do exactly the same as it's doing to
What we don't want to do is to reduce it to a 3-year land supply across the board, because that takes away the incentive for building houses. What we do want to do, and what I personally recommend, is to say, look, at the moment, the 5-year land supply can be calculated either via a local government needs, the methodology that they have, or it can be calculated by a methodology used by developers. Essentially, there are two methodologies there. And that once you've got a 5-year land supply, it's open to appeal. It's open to appeal in the High Court, for example. And what we said is, you need to simplify that process. Firstly, you need a methodology on which, a single methodology on which everyone can agree. And secondly, you take it away from the local plan, totally, and put it in the annual monitoring report of the district council. And once it's gone into the annual monitoring report of the district council, which would need some sort of examination or some sort of audit process, it's unchallengeable until the next
Professor, and then David, sorry David.
Might be the most practical answer, both from the government's point of view and from local opinion, be for you, central government, to tax hoarding, so that the Taylor Wimpey's of this world, with 10,000 approvals to Victor, can't sit on it without incurring costs. So that they have their approvals for, say, a year free. Then the second year is 10%. The third year is 20 or 25, and so on. Because at the moment it's simply not fair on the district council.
I agree it's not fair, and I'll take that suggestion. What we're doing is to make it easier for councils to have compulsory purchase powers over areas that they have given planning permission for.
Yes, and perhaps both.
Well, it's probably 6 of one, half of the other.
David,
Yes, thank you. John, first I want to thank you for the work you've done on neighbourhood plans in general and your support on Thames Farm in particular, which I think everyone here is very grateful for. But I wanted to ask you about another matter related to planning, which I know is affecting several people in the village here who contacted me and relates to back to Thames Farm. As councillor, I've been subject to freedom of information requests in response to large developments where developers have put an FOI request on me to find out what I'm saying about any particular development. And I know that parish councillors here and district councillors have had the same demands placed upon them. When it goes the other way round, it's quite different. And again, I know there are some people in the audience here who have been concerned that they've got land nearby where they know developers are hovering over it because people have knocked on their doors asking for a bat survey, things like that, which doesn't happen unless they've got an application for pre-application advice for planning. But that whole process is becoming sort of shrouded in secrecy. We've got potential developers going along, getting advice from SODC about the likelihood and feasibility of development being allowed on their land. And that's all shut down. Even if you put in an FOI request, they won't tell you anything. So residents are in a situation where a planning application comes in and the developers say, at the pre-planning advice stage, officers have indicated X, Y and Z and generally support this application, and a whole lot of preparatory work has been done, and residents feel they're back-footed and behind on this. So my feeling is the whole pre-application scenario should be transparent. I just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I totally agree with you that the process should be transparent. I think there may need to be some restrictions on commerciality of the development, but it should be transparent completely. And also, I've just come from Tame, where we were discussing similar issues with them. What they're saying was it's a very patchy response as to whether they get invited to those pre-application discussions. Now they're a town with a very established naval plan, and I don't understand why somewhere like Walborough, somewhere like sorry, just slipped. It's old age catching up on you. Just down the road, is invited to pre-application discussions, but Tame is only partially invited to them. And I think once you've got the naval plan, you should be in with those discussions. You should be in as part of that, because the naval plan carries the same force of law as the local plan. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be there for that. And I do think that that's something that you should be arguing for as part of the naval plan. On the FOI request, you should not be. The FOI request should not apply to you.
Now, I was able to rebuff that on the basis that the discussions between people I represent and me as county councillor were confidential one-to-one. So I was able to refute the developers' requests other than any discussions I had with county council officials. I then had to
But if they want to FOI those, they can't FOI you. They have to FOI the county council.
Yeah, that was the route they took.
Well, that I can understand. That you are exempt from the FOI.
But it's the other way round, where residents have tried to get information from the district council, and there was, I've got a quote from one of the officers there, which I thought was horrifying. The exact words were, we will not reveal any information because it will have an adverse effect on our relationship with our customers.
Yeah.
So they consider developers their customers, not the council
Yes,
taxpayer.
would come to place that. I knew it would come back to me. But I agree there needs to be more transparency.
You say your name, by the way. So we've had Kester George in front of us. So Jeff Thomas has been as Kester George on Hartlepool, David Barton, you, Oxfordshire County Councillor. So you say your name and where you're from.
Okay. Roger Roberts from the Heath Parish Council.
Okay.
I'm going to concoct this question out of this, but in 2015 I attended the SODC presentation on all things general. One of them was a presentation which was half an hour relating to the statistics associated with their planning application process. And the statistics were that the year before they had 80+% appeal success rate. Last year it was 48%, and they were genuinely, planning guys there were concerned about their position in life, because if it dropped down to 33%, they get their licence withdrawn for giving approvals for planning. So they were coming down at an annual rate, which meant in a year's time they'd be out of business. This year, went to the conference, similar conference, and there wasn't anything about planning per se on the agenda. So I went to have a chat with a couple of the planning guys and asked the same question. One of them said, when I asked the question, what's the success rate this year? And he said, oh, it's 64%. I said, how have you gone from 48% to 64% when you were heading on a steep spiral? I said, we've changed our planning policy. So I said, and I was rather cynical about it, and afterwards I regretted it. I said, what do you mean? You just approve everything now, do you? Is that how you're getting back at me? And he said, basically, yeah. And now the question I think I've concocted is, do you think that's the right solution on the part of the district council to what the current problem is? Because I don't.
Right. I totally agree with you. I don't think it is the right problem. And I've advised them that, in my opinion, it's difficult to get a definitive letter, if you like, on this, that they're not going to be branded a failing district council on this basis. I think that is one first, to be honest, and that they need to be a bit more robust in giving the correct evidence to the planning committees to be able to take it forward. You know, on the Thames Farm example here, there are a number of factors in there, but the existence of the Henley and Upton local plan was of the neighbourhood plan was a major factor in that decision. And to be frank about it, it was only because I pulled out the case of Crane and the Secretary of State for Local Government that it actually put some backbone into the planning committee to be able to take the decision that it did. So that's a legitimate decision for the planning committee to make. They have to look at the weight that should be given to those policies rather than the administrative weight that should be given to being told that they were a failing authority.
No, just on that one, thank you much for the question. The planning officer refused and recommended approval of that arrangement. So the planning committee, with your support, Duncan, the Crane case coming in, but the planning officer actually recommended, which seems to support your point, Roger, that SODC have weakened themselves to allow more houses to meet their requirements for a 5-year land.
No, I accept that. But a decision was taken by the planning committee that rejected that advice. And that's the thing we've got to do.
Okay.
How corrupt are
That's an interesting question. I don't believe that they are corrupt.
they? Just incompetent.
To me,
I don't think that they are.
Not paid to get any planning once, it's just redeveloping the whole riverfront there.
Right. I mean, I will say this, wouldn't I? I have no role in SODC.
I know that. That's why I'm asking.
Well, it's an interesting point because many people write to me think that I sit at the top of a great hierarchical tree and just order about the councils that are below me. As David knows, I have no powers to be able to do that at all. They will have devolved responsibilities, and while it may be, while there may be times when I would like to have that power, I don't have it. I simply don't have it. But looking on, I don't see any corruption in this sense.
I mean, for example, they moved the footpath in Chip Lake down by the river. The Pride Search people asked them why it happened and got no response at all. And I believe it's not legal to move the footpath.
So I did investigate that. I was investigated, and the Rights of Way officer came along and inspected the footpath and said there was no historical evidence to support the fact that it had been moved illegally.
Well, that's corrupt, because I walked that for the last 20 years and it was moved about 3 years ago.
Well, I'd be happy to re-investigate it.
And they don't reply to any reply. I mean, I'm not really fussed about them moving the footpath, but it's just an indication.
I've replied to every
foreign
inquiry
body
about
that
that.
seeming to get a lot of planning things through very quickly, and ordinary Joes getting nowhere. So you've got foreign billionaires doing that. You've got Jersey-based development company throwing money at it, and given the last comment / question, it seems as if there's quite a lot of influence.
But I've got nothing to do with planning itself, but I have got things to do with footpaths, and if you email me with your specific details, I will look at it again.
And that was Anthony
The Norman, yeah.
the Norman from Bonny Road, and Sue Bates from
Sue Bates from Kidmore End. If at the moment we haven't got a neighbourhood plan, and it is we are a small parish with 5 small villages, there's a difference, isn't there, between the grants that are given to larger villages and smaller villages. Is that likely to change? Because if you're a larger village, you've got a larger manpower who can come forward and volunteer to do all the work. But if you're actually a smaller village, then, you know, that's possibly not so likely to happen. I know you might not have so much to do as such, but there are other challenges that perhaps could be supported by a sort of equal amount of grant money.
Well, let me tackle first of all, the question that I failed to pick up here about the amount of time that's involved with this, and the amount of your time that's put into it. And quite honestly, I don't think that this should be something that you produce on the back of a fact packet. This is something that is setting your village for the future, and it's quite right that you should have to put a decent amount of time into getting that right. So I'm no apology for time that goes into that. The alternative is for you to sit back and do nothing and just accept that somebody at SOBC is going to do it all for you. Well, I don't think that that's the right way of doing it. I don't think that's the right way of doing it. You know, I sat there like Hester and others as a parish councillor and seeing the forms that we had to fill in of approval, disapproval, or no firm opinion of it, and send them all off to SOBC where they're totally ignored. I don't think that's the right way of approaching taking local views. So even with small parishes, I think it's absolutely essential that you're going to find people to be able to do the work that's involved. Now, the work that's involved is not a level of detailed planning work that you need to be a planning consultant for. It's what we wanted with this was the common sense view of the man on the street. Now, that needs to be put in planning terms, which is why there's an amount of money that's available. But what I will do is take that back to, in this case, to SOBC, because I think the major part of their money comes from that source, and have a conversation with them about that.
This neighbourhood planning document was sent out by the Minister of Housing and Planning. It actually says the neighbourhood plan should be deemed not out of date unless there is a significant lack of land supply for housing in the wider local authority. What does significant mean, and who decides it?
Right, that's the issue about a 5-year land supply or 3-year land supply, and the significant amount of land not being available will be if it got 3 years.
So what does significant mean?
3 years.
Next to the acreage.
Acreage? Or housing target? Or
No. It's measured on the basis of the amount of houses that are deliverable within a set period. And what I'm saying is this brings it back down to a 3-year period.
Deliverable or delivered?
Deliverable.
Or approved?
This is the first question. Julie, what is the number of inhabitants in the village at the moment?
We've got 14, we obviously have, as a parish we have 2 villages, Low Shipley and Shipley Cross. I know that the top number is around about 1,400 electorals. Electorals obviously come over the age of 18 to vote. I'm looking to any colleagues to help me on any sensitive. I know that number, and I don't know the absolute populations of both villages.
I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
If I may, if all the planning applications were granted, and if we took the average number of people that had, say, 2 adults, 2 children, by how much?
Okay. You preempted that question a little bit, so I did a bit of homework. Just top of the head back to the envelopes. It's not precisely if we work out how many people per house and all that sort of stuff. But if we went down through all the applications that we've got at the moment, we would probably double the size of those Shipley. More than double in terms of we've got care home residents, we've got the Wyvale site, Thames Farm, and we can see the protection of just all the applications that are accident at the moment. We would probably more than double the village, and we would have to walk quite a long way to see it.
And following that up, if I may, we take 2 cars per house, huge increase for traffic. Central village and Station Road is peaceful because there's no such thing as a speed limit, 20 miles an hour down it. And people need a car. How many people are going on with months of that question and doing a car? And how many people are going to get over the time?
The first question is, we know from Oxfordshire County Council Highways Department that the infrastructure is not close to the police department outside the Penny Hobson neighbourhood plan. Some of these, all of these would be outside of that plan, add to the numbers. As you know from Shipley, there's only 2 ways you can go. That's right to Henley and left towards Reading. So whatever development takes place, it will have to go in one of the 2 directions. Now let's assume half goes to Henley. Interesting, I read last night, sent it to you, John, and was handed the air pollution figures, which I'm going to suggest we put daily on the website, and they're appalling readings. So I would say they can't have any more roads and infrastructure can't do with that, but air pollution is really awful. So cars is a significant sustainability argument that we put on every site. The second part of that question I forgot. The retirement village, I can't remember how many residents were there. Slightly possibly different. They might argue that the number of cars may be less because of the care required by the residents themselves, but it's a significant number.
Yes, my name is Nick now. Can I just ask about big developers putting in bids, and it's not necessarily specifically locally, but they know the first time they bid in it's going to get turned down, and they've got enough money to just make a modification, and they put in something rather preposterous, which they're going to trim down and change. And just putting it in, every so often, every year, every 2 years, they know eventually it's highly likely to get accepted, and they can wait because they don't need to develop immediately. What sort of protection mechanism for that?
I totally agree with you that the developers do that. They do put applications in time and time again. And what we wanted to do was to draw a line under that. And the way to draw a line under that was to produce a neighbourhood plan that had sufficient protections to be able to say, when we say no, we mean no.
So actually go away.
And they will actually go away. And that's what we're trying to get the neighbourhood plan system to. Now, it is quite new, so it's not surprisingly coming up with these teething problems as we go along, and we're fixing those as they come up. But broadly, the thing is in place, and it's shifted quite a lot of power, to be honest, from the district council to the parish council, which I think is the right way that plan should go.
Here first, and soon again back. So,
My name's Rosie, I live in Worship. I'd like to comment about the plan you talked about. I think it was where you said, it's a broader plan, not just about how you resist planning, but how you look at the constituents of the village and what it needs to be a thriving and continual village. I only moved into Shipley 2 years ago. Practically every one of my neighbours said, you'll never move out except in the box. Now, on one hand, that's quite nice, because well, that's a nice place to live. On the other hand, that's very worrying if that just says the age profile continues, my age profile continues to rise over everybody else's. And that's an unsustainable position to take, because the whole infrastructure creaks, everybody creaks, and we're not bringing in those new. And one of the concerns I have, Jude, is that when I read what you put on the website, it's all rather NIMBYism, anti-development. Now I know we're trying to protect what's here and what's right, but I don't see much in terms of a positive view about where we can put properties and where younger people can afford to become in and keep the infrastructure there. The butcher is up for sale right now, the engineers down the end of that road was sold a while ago. The corner shop, I don't know how successful it will continue to be, but it depends upon there being enough people to keep those things going. And I would like to see a little bit more talk about how we are positively encouraging growth in the village, as well as resisting what we obviously.
Well, I think you're absolutely spot on, actually, and I apologise for the fact that because we are under attack at sites that we've had some endorsement to our community plan. We went out to the village now around about three years ago, possibly even 4, and asked them for the views, and that gave us a sort of mandate in terms of how the council would react to the responses from that. And it was a very strong comeback to us on protecting the Greenfield site. Now that immediately looks like NIMBYism, but we have a duty to do that. But, and I want to put your name now, I think you're absolutely spot on. We need to create an experience. We have done some things, for example, the second housing house, sorry, we really don't follow this, where we were threatened for that to be knocked down and residential development to replace it. And we fought very hard to recreate the smaller units for sheltered accommodation. And sheltered accommodation, although it's going to be retirement oriented, can also apply to younger people. There is another factor, of course, is the basic cost of any site of property within the parish of Shipley. No matter how small it is, it's a price range which is above the affordability for many categories of lesser paid individuals. I think the future is that we need to design a plan, a neighbourhood plan, that accommodates those sorts of views, to see how we can actually see how the future of this village will be migrated over the next, is it 2032 anyway. And that plan can look at some of these issues and see if we can deal with it, and if we can't, we'll deal with it.
But Tudor, the important point that you raised there is that the people who should be deciding this are you. It's not the people who are sitting in Whitehall, it's not even the people who are sitting in SMC that should decide, it's you who should decide. And there are already objections to the idea of growth. You should be having that discussion effectively behind closed doors, without developers knocking on your door. Now, I know you've got developers knocking on your door and you're not going to get away from that. But nevertheless, the sort of discussions you should have are the discussions you should be having as a village to be able to decide what you want for the future.
But that doesn't necessarily mean
Sorry?
that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be passed by Easter. But, you know,
Well,
Easter.
at the end of the process, the neighbourhood plan, whatever it is put to a referendum. It's subject to full democratic process within the area, and And once it's done that, it has the force of law.
I hope you're right.
Well, I know I'm right.
I tell you what, we have a couple more questions on planning. We need to ask you some other questions about other stuff. I think Sue and who else wants to ask questions on planning? And the lady in the back. So can we go with the Sue first, and the lady in the back?
A number of parishes in this area of SODC are actually lined up along the boundary with Reading. And I suppose there is a plan, an outline plan at the moment, which has been put in to SODC, which is a great concern to a number of parishes, including ours, because we're sort of abussing that. Can you give me any idea of the support for sort of keeping the boundary between Reading and South Oxfordshire?
Yes, well, I can give you my full support for that. Okay. I'm fully behind keeping the boundary between. Let me put it another way. I'm fully behind keeping Reading in its place and not letting it spill over into South Oxfordshire. Now, we come to South Oxfordshire to live because we like South Oxfordshire. We don't want to be living in Reading. Now, the way in which you can do that, I would suggest for those villages that don't have a neighbourhood plan there, you could actually do one together. There's no reason why it just has to be one parish that does the neighbourhood plan. You can do it as multiple parishes there. And the quicker you get on with that process, the better it will be, and the more intensity that it will have there. But I'm certainly taking that point up. And it leads into the discussion, I think, with multiple third bridge as well.
Yeah, well, that is coming up later. Sorry.
Hi, Joanne Stone. I haven't got a properly formed question, but my question is concerning when somebody applies to put houses on a site, they do a proposed plan. We propose to put 7-ish in as outline planning. What protection do we have if they get permission for 7, that 7 is the number that, they won't say, oh, we've got 7, but should we go for 21 or, whatever the maximum density is they could fit on that site?
Well, they should have to go back to getting new planning.
Right, but once you've allowed them to build outside the curtilage of the village, you've sort of let that point go. Does that sort of have any...
Yes, you conceded the point that there should be development there. That's absolutely true. But you haven't conceded the point on the number of houses that should be there.
Right, okay.
Okay, any more on planning? Thank you, John, for that. But I think I'll just introduce one quick one. I've had a few, no one or two people. Area of outstanding natural beauty, here at the last time we raised this as an issue, and came back and said the review process would be 2018. We subsequently had a letter from Natural England to say that it will probably now not be, they've got about, I've got it just about 10 or 12 to review, and it will be 2018-19 at the very earliest, and then we will have to fight our corner in that sort of pre-review process. And if we're really lucky, if it's the 10, we might be fucked up because they can only work on one dozen resources at a time. So we group of all parishes, and there are 4 or 5 other parishes here that club together to try and push this thing forward. Any development here will be beyond our lifetime. We know the latest on that.
I'm going to do 2018-19.
Oh, the way we're doing it now,
I haven't seen this letter. If you'd like to...
I think it was forwarded to you actually, but I can see that.
Yeah. No. Can you forward it to me and send it letter, and I will pick it up and pursue that.
Okay. Other question, obviously third bridge. Your position on the third bridge, John? You just asked that general question.
My position on the third bridge is very clear. What we asked Wokingham to do was to model the traffic flows, not just for this area, but right up to the M40. And that they have failed to do. So we need to do that in order to understand the effects that a third bridge is going to have on places like Nettleware, for example. Now, my view on it is that it makes absolutely no sense just to put a bridge in place unless you have looked at both the access to the bridge and the exit from the bridge. And as far as South Oxfordshire is concerned, all we'd be doing is pouring huge amounts of traffic off the bridge into roads that are totally unable to cope with the traffic there. And what we were asking for to look at things other than a bridge as the best means of dealing with the traffic problems that do exist between South Oxfordshire and Reading, and maybe that is parking rights. Maybe it's measures like that. We haven't restricted what we were looking at in those terms, but that's where we were, and that's where I stand.
Good. Well, an idea that was mooted and then squashed, and I'm not quite sure why it was squashed, was to have a footbridge on the second set of pillars on the railway over, and that would enable people like me, rather, to get to Twyford or Walgrave or those places without using the car. And not quite the pillars are there, and a footbridge and a bicycle bridge would make all sorts of sense.
I'm sure that does make a lot of sense, but what needs to be looked at is in terms of the overall approach to traffic from between South Oxfordshire and Reading, which is why we wanted some context in it and why we asked Birmingham to do this work.
But I don't understand why it was going to be the Millennium Bridge, wasn't it? And it never happened for some reason.
I think that's just because Reading couldn't get the money.
No, I do with access to
Yes, you've introduced the other subject, so on the third bridge. Well, it's a different subject, because in fact what we're interested in is that I mentioned the pollution levels and the cars and all this development taking place, but we don't see any policies on other forms of transportation. Bus services, pedestrian walkways, bridges, cycle paths. We've been campaigning for, to create really sustainable forms of non-pollutable means of transport, non-polluting means of transport. And yet, we fight on sustainability ground because no one considers cycle paths. Quite hard for cycle path between here and that bridge too. So it seems logical that we put some money into alternative forms of transport.
Well, we have picked up one of the cycle path here, alongside the railway.
We have.
No, I.
Oh, we have. Okay, sorry.
As well, after our last meeting.
Good.
I haven't had a definitive response to this thing, so since I haven't had a definitive response, I'm still somewhat hopeful. We'll just have to see on that.
John, that's really good, because we are personally very keen on that. The extension of that cycle path was to start from Henley to Shipwreck using the extra line. And clearly that line could then be extended on beyond. There's a huge obviously a massive cost implication of that. But that's a sort of infrastructure that would benefit the communities long, long way, absolutely hugely. So your support, John, is incredible.
I'm very well the issue of the cycle path was dependent upon Network Road, and that was an issue related to electrification. So the question was, with electrification and the possible changes to bridge heights, etc., would the path still be feasible? The fact, of course, is there will be no electrification, or at least in the foreseeable future, possibly then. So that is potentially back on the agenda, but that is what has been blocking it thus far.
Could I just add to what David was saying, that I think one of the, to go on his list is we give serious consideration to motorising the A34 and the A404.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because most of the Oxfordshire MPs have been having meetings with the Minister of Transport to discuss precisely that. And we were running up against objections from civil servants to being able to do that. Unfortunately, what the Minister has said is that he will get undertaken a detailed assessment of the accidents. we've all seen the horrendous accidents that there have been on the A34 as it stands. And that needs to be looked at in detail to be able to justify taking it up to motorway status. The difficulty still comes with what you do with the motorway as it runs through England, because there isn't room to expand it there, and that is still an issue that needs to be looked at. But I'm on that.
Right.
Although you said what you wanted from Wokingham, you haven't actually answered the question of where you stand on the concept of a third bridge.
Well, the concept of a third bridge is that I can't possibly judge the concept of a third bridge until I see what the solution for it is going to be. If it is going to be a bridge that throws huge amounts of traffic into South Oxfordshire, then I don't want it.
Right.
Okay, is that plain enough?
Yeah.
I've run out of my questions that I've had from residents who are not here, some who are here. But questions on any topic whatsoever, or come back quickly for 5 minutes on questions? Yes, please. Yeah, again.
My name is Kenneth McAlpine. I'd like to bring up the subject of fly tipping, which is now becoming quite a topic, I would say, in this surrounding area. Is the law being used correctly, or does it need to be strengthened?
Okay, the answer to that is I don't know the answer. I don't know what the response is, because fly tipping is down to the district council to be able to deal with, and as it's one of those devolved matters, I've left it with the district council rather than sitting on their shoulders and trying to interfere all the time. But if you let me go away, I will look that up, because you're seeing a lot of extra fly tipping.
Certainly, a lot of it. I think one of the things I suggest is that as a deterrent to stop it is to use the maximum fine on someone being caught in the act of doing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to me that we even think about that.
Well, I think that's a very sensible approach. Let me. It's a shame of district council, isn't it? Because people could have.
He was invited. Both were invited. Yes.
Right, but they could have answered that question directly for you. But leave it with me, and I'll go away and ask. Sir?
My name is Graham Cooper. I'm a resident in Lower Shipley. I may have like to go back to planning a little bit about East Down. I'm not a planning specialist, but as I understand it, developers do not make a contribution in section 106 or something like that. And so it's very attractive for them to build these developments. But they allegedly are bringing in employment. Where are the staff going to provide from, and where are they going to live? Is there not an opportunity for the government to require them to build residential accommodation in there for their staff as well, which would possibly give more economic housing, but also take some traffic off the road?
Right. Well, let me go back to what I said about central government's involvement with housing. What central government doesn't want to do is to get back into the business of determining the amount of housing that needs to go into the district. Given that responsibility to the district, we're very happy for the district to have that responsibility. They're much closer to the subject, and they know what's going on. On the question of contributions that care home builders make, you're quite right that they're not subject to Section 106 or to the community infrastructure levy, but McCarthy and Stone did offer a sum of money to the district council in lieu of that was broadly equivalent to the amount that they would otherwise pay. We need to give them credit for what they have done in doing that. But where they're going to get people who who are going to be employed there is a very good question, because in the total amount of the constituency, which runs from the southern edge of Bicester to the northern edge of Reading, there are only 200 and just over 200 people who are unemployed. Actually, I think that's a wonderful statistic for us to have.
David,
David Fellowship Lake. Just looking to the future, the way things change, we have the district and the unitary argument in Oxfordshire. Having a unitary may help because it comes down to sustainability and planning decisions being made. Certainly the experience of Thames Farm and the recommendations made by planning officers seem to take no real account of the national policy framework in terms of sustainability. It seems to be disregarded, and that's in terms of traffic going through Henley, environmental aspects, education. We've had to almost pause in terms of Thames Farm and Pankhurst Crane versus Crane, and that helped significantly. But this parish council had to make a tremendous effort to get Oxfordshire County Council to realise the dangers of that road, site visits so people realise it, because the planning officers were oblivious to it. So there's a particular issue there on how planning officers can possibly make it, actually almost disregard sustainability as an argument. That comes out very clearly. The bigger question was what your view might be, and take a second, is unitary, what that might do in terms of having common sense applied to those boundaries in the context of infrastructure being put in place which is suitable for any housing growth.
Well, I think you raised a very pertinent question there. You cannot have a planning system where the person responsible for planning is completely divorced from the planning process, and where the input to that process is patchy, to be frank. Where I stand on the unitary debate is it's about lucky simple. To be frank, I'm not going to give my preference out to you here. I'm going to keep my counsel on that. I would just say that the view that the County Council has been given that county unitary applies is not the case. That is not the case of the Secretary of State. The decision is still open for people to make their views. No.
Now just one more. The Secretary of State, I believe there's supposed to be some big announcement in terms of housing initiatives in the future to build more houses, which the country needs on the big scale. How is that going to manifest itself in your view? Some rough guidelines on how that might impact neighbourhood planning as well?
The way that will manifest itself is not by taking over again the responsibility to set the housing market. What it will be is to provide incentives for district councils to get on with it. Now, in South Oxfordshire, the district council is getting on with that, is getting on with putting its plan in place. But there are many district councils across the country that haven't produced a local plan. I mean, we have one just a few miles up the road here in Oxford that has not produced a local plan, and yet it expects the rest of the districts around it to simply accept its numbers, which have not been tested in public, and the policies for which have not been tested in public. It just expects us all to accept its numbers for overspill from Oxford. I think that's absolutely outrageous, actually.
But they have been accepted, haven't they? Isn't
Well,
it 6,500 going to South Oxford to be in their next local plan?
Well, there is an overspill from Oxford, which the district councils can argue about. But I still think that it is outrageous that a council, particularly of the size of Oxford City, can carry on without having produced a plan.
But there's an assumption, as I understand it, that overspill, be it overspilling quotes or 6,000 for the South Oxford, to the other parts of the districts have to take some too. And any planning inspector coming along is going to, my view, take account of, oh, that number should be in there, therefore you're sure there'll be a 5-year land supply.
Well, that's part of the difficulty that SOBC is in that both in Charnwell and in West Oxfordshire, when they were producing their plans, these figures were accepted, and it didn't leave any room for SOBC to object. So they are in the public domain. They are accepted figures to that, and it makes it very difficult for the district council to contradict them.
But that's the government accepting it, or
No,
in fact,
it's the county accepting it.
so the county makes that determination on planning. It's not a localised district.
Well, what it needs, what it is all the councils together making that determination. And that, of course, is upheld by the planning inspector when a plan is examined.
Thank you.
I think we need to ask the question.
Highways and byways. Is that very likely they might complete the footpath between Moyle Court here and the beginning of the house down Moyle Avenue? Because the state of the road is very bad, it's very, very muddy. And it was addressed by the what I call egg cartons on the inside of the hedge. But all these young mummies who are wanting to bring their children to school really don't want to walk down these egg cartons, so they all park in front of our houses going down the road, making it extremely difficult to get out of one's drive without the risk of a car hurtling down the Moyle Avenue into it or trying to exit.
Yeah, I understand the problem. I'm going to pass that over to your county council.
You're talking about footpath on the other side of the road to the school, or the...
Well, on the side here, on the same side as the housing with more and more hall. If it could be completed from where it stops currently, at the beginning of where the council house is, completed from there to here, because there's massive puddles and muddy areas, and the inside where they've got this walkway for people to walk their children to school, I don't think it's being used enough, it's all very soggy and rich.
Right. Well, I'm happy to look at that. We have a constant issue with funding things from new footpaths, but being very to investigate the matter.
Actually, I can say something about that because Shiplake Parish Council tried very hard to get that path extended, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And what David had just said applied then. There was no funding to do it. So best of luck to anyone that tries again to have that section installed, because it is an important piece of paper, a footpath.
The thing is, there are more children now.
I know, no, I agree.
So of course there are more people
It's
using
always
it.
been the same.
Let me just say that as a parish with a native plan, hopefully, the parish with a native plan, you get 25% of the community infrastructure living. So there will be money available for you to undertake this work yourself.
I think I need to bring this to a close. I'm conscious you didn't see what's going on. Any desperate questions?
You might be
Are you around? Okay, well, this is lunch at some point.
I have a desperate question.
You have a desperate question?
Yes, changing the scope from trying to completely what's happening on Brexit. Give us the inside track.
If you think I'm going to give you the inside on Brexit, I won't be here now. I'd be making a fortune as a pundit somewhere. Look, the situation at Brexit is that last week we had a vote in the House of Commons about whether we tripled our Article 15, whether we missed the timetable, all of those sort of things, which was won by over 300 votes. And I think that's settled that particular matter. The issue of Brexit and the Supreme Court is an academic legal issue. And nobody should be getting upset with the Supreme Court or the High Court for their attitude on it. To be honest, we have two High Court cases. We have a case decided by the High Court in England against the government, and a case decided by the High Court in Northern Ireland that's for the government. It's perfectly proper for the Supreme Court to make that decision. If we need to introduce a one-line bill that merely says we delegate everything to the government, which is the most likely solution, then that's what we will have to do. But I was very keen to see that even the Labour Party had come round to saying we shouldn't reveal our hands.
Okay.
So I'm not.
Right, I'm conscious it's lunchtime over as well.